Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of hell. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Rebel Hearts. This is your host, Kristie Reeves. This is the place where we're having conversations with change makers, paradigm shifters, people who are pushing the human consciousness in order to create a better tomorrow. And we're all about inspiring you to become the change that you want to see in the world. And today's guest is working on something that has been very dear to my heart, actually, since I was a kid. He's been working with the Dakota People's Law Project, and he's currently defending Chase Iron Ice and Holy Elk Liberty and what I would call the aftermath of Standing Rock and the Water Protectors. And we had Daniel P Nelson from Dakota Law Project on the show in December. So we're going to continue the conversation on Standing Rock and what's happening with the fossil fuel industry and the Dakota Access Pipeline, and educate you about the things that mainstream news might not be telling you. And it was actually interesting. When I was 19 years old, I read a book called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by a man named D. Brown. And I know that today's guest was actually part of a movement back in the 1970s occupying Wounded Knee. So I'm really, really honored that he's here today. And you know what we've been seeing at Standing Rock is just a continuation of things that I've been reading about that's been going on here for many, many years. It's a continuation of treaties that are being broken, injustice, racial injustice, and money over respect and honoring our environment. So I'm really, really honored to introduce to you in one moment Daniel Sheehan, but let me tell you a little bit about him. Daniel Sheehan is a Harvard-trained attorney, and he has led or participated in some of the most important public interest cases of the last 40 years. His lawsuits include the Watergate and Iran-Contra Scandals, the Pentagon Papers, and the killing of Karen Silkwood. In 1973 to 74, he served as amicus counsel to the American Civil Liberties Union regarding the occupation of Wounded Knee. In 1980, he co-founded the Christic Institute, a non-profit public interest law center that, among many other cases, prosecuted members of the Ku Klux Klan in Greensboro, North Carolina, and represented victims of the 3 Miles Island disaster in Pennsylvania. In his work with Dakota People's Law Project, Daniel has been a principal attorney in drafting the legal strategy for the Federal Justice Department's lawsuits against the state of South Dakota for its violation of the Indian Child Welfare Act. He was present at Standing Rock during opposition to the Dakota Access Pipeline and serves as defense counsel for 2 water protectors facing severe charges, Chase Iron Ice and Holy Elk Liberty. He is one of the small number of attorneys to be invited to join the mini Wiconi legal defense and offense comedy along with Bruce Ellison. His autobiography, The People's Advocate, was published by Counterpoint Press. You can learn more about Daniel Sheehan at his website, danielpsheehan.com, as well as his Facebook page. Rebel Hearts, it's an honor to welcome Daniel Sheehan on today's show. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Kristie.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know you're in the middle of amazing things you are doing. And before we actually go into the work you're currently doing with the Dakota People's Law Project and prepping the legal cases, supporting the water defenders, I actually want to ask you one question.
Sure.
And go into what was actually your inspiration for the work that you are doing today.
Well, it was easier for us because we're sort of the senior class of the baby boomer generation. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I graduated from college in Harvard College in 1967, mm-hmm. and the big halcyon year, 1968, where all these extraordinary things happened, was my very first year of law school when Martin Luther King was assassinated, mm-hmm. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. We had the huge marches on Washington, D.C. over the Vietnam War. We had the people were shot later, 1970 at Kent State, and all the civil rights marches were going on down in Selma and Birmingham. So that it was very clear that our generation had to rise up to try to stop the Vietnam War, to stop the violations of civil rights of the people in the South. We had to do all these things. So it was perfectly natural for young lawyers to come out. I was a co-founder of the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review with Mark Green. And we put that together and reached out to young lawyers all across the country to try to help them do civil rights cases. So it was in that context that I ended up initiating the original case that established the right of journalists to protect their confidential news sources. And because of that, I got hired by the #1 litigation law firm in the country that represents NBC. And we ended up doing the Pentagon Papers case for the New York Times there. And then I got recruited by F. Lee Bailey's office to go in to be one of the special counsel on the Watergate burglary case. And then I got recruited from there to go back to Harvard Divinity School. And I was working on cases. That's where I was contacted by a Harvard Law School classmate of mine, Joe Durham, to go out to be legal counsel for ACLU at the Wounded Knee occupation in 1973. So I was there throughout that entire occupation, and we actually participated in crafting the legal briefs that resulted in the dismissal of all of the cases against the major American Indian movement leaders in those cases. So it was the times and the events of that particular period that drew me into doing all of those things. And what I discovered is that there weren't all that many of my classmates at Harvard Law School or the other people from Yale or the University of Chicago or Berkeley or any other big major law schools. There weren't that many people that stayed with it. I just happened to have stayed with it.
That's amazing.
And because of that, I'm sort of one of the last lawyers standing. We're doing this at Standing Rock, as it turns out. So Bruce Ellison was a longtime civil rights lawyer who was there. This is going to be his last case. He was representing Red Fawn, and he says that's probably going to be the last case before he retires. I've got another 30 years of litigation to do before I retire.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that. And it's interesting, one of the images I ever sent of you was actually the founding of you're in front of the Christic Institute, and the headline reads, "Rebel Without Applause." I'm really happy that you're in Rebel Hearts and hopefully getting a lot of applause for what you're doing right now.
Right. That's our Christic Institute back in Washington, D.C.
Exactly. So, Dan, what got you involved working with the Lakota People's Law Project and drawn to the work they are doing right now?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, back in 1973, I was co-counsel with Joe Durham for the American Civil Liberties Union, doing briefs for the American Indian movement with regard to the occupation there. And because of that, I went on to become co-counsel with Joe Durham for the Native American Rights Committee for ACLU National. And because of that stint in that position, before Steve Pivar has come on, Steve is still the head of the Native American Rights Committee for ACLU National. Joe and I preceded Steve in that position. And because of that, I got contacted back in 2004 by a series of grandmothers from at that particular point, it was the Pine Ridge Reservation, and some grandmothers from the Cheyenne River Reservation. There was this huge epidemic began as soon as George W. Bush, George Jr., came into office. There was this huge epidemic began of seizing Native American children and taking them away from their parents and putting them in all white foster care settings. And half of those kids never came back. Nobody knew where they went. And so we were asked to go in to investigate what was happening. So we went in and discovered that there was this cottage industry basically going on of taking young Lakota children for virtually any reason they could rationalize in the State Department of Social Services, because they were getting up to $79,000 a year for each Indian child that they took from the W. Bush administration. And
crazy.
they were declaring them all to be special needs children. And so the Bush administration was sending up to $79,000 a year to the state of South Dakota for each one of the children they took.
Wow.
And so that it turned out to be a huge money generator for the state of South Dakota. So we went in and participated with many others in getting legislation passed that opened up a pathway for each of the reservations to get a grant from the federal government, Department of Health and Human Services, to establish their own all Native American run Child and Family Services agency on each reservation to take the power away from the state of South Dakota. They were taking up to 742 Native American kids every single year away from not only their parents, but from their entire relatives and from their entire tribe, and putting them in white foster care. It was sort of a replay of the old boarding schools that was going on here.
Yeah.
So because of that, we had developed between 2004 and 2016. By that time, we'd been there for 12 years, had an office in Rapid City, working with all 9 of the major reservations in the state of South Dakota. So, and the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation is half in South Dakota and half in North Dakota. So when the events started to transpire, originally with the XL pipeline, the big XL pipeline that was going to be coming down from Canada with the tar sands, and the tribal council of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe authorized Phyllis Young, one of their members, to lead a major opposition to that pipeline. And as you know, they succeeded in stopping that pipeline. They got the Obama administration to refuse to allow the Canadian pipeline to come down in the United States. And then virtually immediately after that, the Energy Transfer Partners, which is a big conglomerate of huge major oil corporations, they set up this conglomerate to drill pipelines around through North America. And they announced that they were going to be changing the route of their Dakota Access Pipeline, which is going to be pumping 910,000 gallons of oil every single hour from the Bakken oil fields, way up on the Canadian border of North Dakota. They were going to change the pipeline's route from 10 miles north of the 92% white community of Bismarck, North Dakota, and they were going to be shifting it down south to go directly through the Great Sioux Nation, a half a mile from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, and directly under their sole source of drinking water, which was Lake Oahe. And so that new pipeline route was clearly designed to put the pipeline, a potentially dangerous pipeline that could have disastrous consequences if and when it leaks, to destroy the drinking water of the entire Great Sioux Nation. So the people who've been involved in opposing the XL pipeline, Phyllis Young and the other people, organized and shifted their focus over onto the pipeline, the new Dakota Access Pipeline, and began to sit down and organize a community. Originally, they had a thing called the Sacred Stone Camp, and then they set up the Ocheti-Sacoan Camp. And the native people were standing in the pathway of the pipeline being able to come down through their sacred territory. There, you can see it there, the size of this pipeline that we're talking about. And that they have a safety system that can't even detect a leak less than 1%. So with 910,000 gallons coming through the pipeline, you could have as much as 9,100 gallons of oil being spilled into the aquifer of the lake every single hour, and they wouldn't even know it. And so that this was a major demonstration, a peaceful demonstration, putting themselves in the pathway of the pipeline. And then what happened in September of 2016 is one of the private security companies, the Leighton Security Company, called in dogs, brought in attack dogs, police dogs, and started sicking them on the people. saying that they shouldn't be that close to where the pipeline was going to be going. And that went out like wildfire across the world on the internet. And it struck everybody as so much like, there it is, them attacking the people. It looked so much like the attack in Birmingham and Selma, Alabama, back in the 1960s, that all kinds of people, there it is, from all around the country. See, I mean, there they are on the end of a big chain, and they're just attacking the people who are just standing there protesting. And so more and more people started to come. We were contacted to come to try to help. The Lakota People's Law Office that had been previously working on the issue of the children being taken away. But because we knew so many of the people that were involved in all of the tribal councils, we were asked to come in to help. So we came in, and almost immediately after we came in, after the dogs attacked everybody, the Energy Transfer Partners, the big conglomerate of oil companies, hired the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation, which was like Blackwater International. The big infamous Blackwater International that has killed all those innocent civilians in the Middle East, et cetera, and got sued and thrown out of the country. Well, it turns out that the founder of the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation was the head of anti-terrorism for Blackwater International worldwide. And so he and his people prism everything through the lens of terrorism. And so this new private military corporation came in and started characterizing all of the people that were sitting in the path of the pipeline as terrorists, potential terrorists. They were opposed to private industry. They were threatening the valuable infrastructure of the country. They started coming up with all kinds of framing that put this in a context of sounding like these people were physical threats of violence. And yet they were just sitting there, as you can see here, they were just sitting there peacefully in the pathway of the pipeline. And the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation started propagandizing all of the local law enforcement people, the state police, the state National Guard, started propagandizing them, saying these are potential terrorists because the Lakota people are anti-Christian. They're anti-Christian, just like the jihadists in the Middle East, and they're also religiously motivated, just like the people in the Middle East, and they are potential terrorists, just like the people in the Middle East. Well, it turns out that the vast majority of the people that were personnel working for the Tiger Swan Private Security Corporation, they were all veterans of the Middle East. They had all kind of cut their teeth on attacking tribal people in the Middle East who were opposing the seizing and taking of their oil. And so that they were perfectly cocked and ready to go to consider any people who are indigenous people, tribal people who aren't intrinsically fundamentalist Christians, and here you see one of the spiritual people of the Lakota people holding up water, showing that water is sacred, holding a sacred water ceremony, and you can see how the military people are responding. That they're all armed and ready to go, as though he's somehow a terrorist of some sort. And that whole template began to be put forward by the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation, and they started making up lies about the people. They said that they were dumping all their sewage into the river, which was totally untrue. They had a permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under the Obama administration to be there on that land. The Dakota Access Pipeline people were listening to these lies that were being put out by the Tiger Swan Private Military Security Corporation and spreading them all through the state of North Dakota, and they were actually asserting that they showed them they were setting up a garden where they were putting compost into the garden to help build a garden, and they were saying, "See, here they are pouring garbage into the river. It's going to contaminate the entire Missouri River." So that what they did is they were basically the old ploy, accusing the good guys of doing exactly what the bad guys were doing. So that they captured all of that legitimate hostility and anger of anyone potentially contaminating the river, and they turned it on the peaceful demonstrators. Now, this is a tactic that has been worked out by the Central Intelligence Agency that was working hand in glove with the Tiger Swan private military corporation in Blackwater all through the Middle East, to figuring out how you turn the local population against the people who are the minority of people who are opposing the military seizure of the oil fields.
Yeah.
And so they brought this tactic back to the United States. And so what is represented by Standing Rock, among many other things, is the bringing home from the Middle East, in Africa, in South America, where these private military corporations have been deployed to protect the oil drilling and the contamination of the water of the tribal people in those areas. They've now brought it home to the United States, and they're deploying all of those same tactics against the people, and they're actually deceiving local sheriff's departments and local police into believing that these peaceful people are in fact terrorists, or at least potential terrorists. And once they start treating them as potential terrorists, they treat them as actual terrorists. Until they finally get everybody convinced that that's what's happening. And then they start arresting them all and charging them with felony crimes of various kinds. And there are 843 of the water protectors that have been now arrested and charged with criminal conduct. And here you see them spraying them with fire extinguishers and everything, that the people were simply going to be going across the backwater creek there to go up onto the land that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have said they have taken by eminent domain.
And
they just unilaterally seized the land and said, okay, we own the land now, and so you can't come on it.
Exactly. And I've seen footage where it was snowing, freezing cold in Standing Rock, and the water protectors were being sprayed with water guns in minus temperatures. I saw pictures of one woman even losing her arms because she was hit that strongly. But that was all on the night of November 20th. Of 2016. That was when the Tiger Swan people launched this attack against the people that were basically what happened is the Tiger Swan private military people got the state police to shut down the bridge across the backwater creek, and saying that, the bridge is unsafe. It can't bear the weight of anybody. And then what they did is they brought out two massive heavy armed vehicles and put them on the bridge after shutting the bridge down, saying it couldn't hold just normal people walking on the bridge. Oh my goodness.
And so some of the people from the camp, some of the young Native American guys, went out and picked the trucks up and started carrying them off the bridge. and the Tiger Swan people went ballistic and attacked them with water cannons, these great big water cannons they're on the big armored vehicles that they brought in, these Bearcat armored vehicles that are right straight out of the Middle East. And instead of having 50 caliber machine guns on top of them, they had these 1,000-pound per square inch water cannons that they started blasting all of the people with, and then throwing tear gas at them, and then concussion grenades, and then firing rock hard rubber bullets that they put in the snow. They put them in the snow to freeze them, and then put them in the guns and shot the people with them. And the people were all sitting praying, and so they started getting attacked by these police in the Tiger Swan people. And so when they started to get out shields and hold them up to protect themselves against they started declaring that those shields were designed to impede legitimate law enforcement. And so they started arresting people for impeding legitimate law enforcement by holding up shields to block the water cannons. And that's how they started charging the people with all these crimes.
Oh my goodness. It's so incredible how these same strategies are being used over and over. And I want to go in a little bit deeper, because one of the things I was reading about Standing Rock, as you said at the very beginning, the Dakota Access Pipeline was supposed to be built around Bismarck, and then the Army Corps of Engineers said it's not safe for the environment, it's not okay to build over there, and it was moved into territory, not acknowledging that all of a sudden it became a racial minority issue.
Yes, that's clearly so. It was clearly designed to place the pipeline in a racial minority community.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is, this had been an historical practice of all kinds of noxious infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
from toxic waste dumps to refuge centers, to recycling plants,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
rubber plants,
Yeah.
to and these oil pipelines. These are all considered to be potentially dangerous infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
and that in like 90% of the time prior to 1997, the companies and the licensing agencies would all build these things in minority communities.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty well known across the country that had been going on. And so an executive order was issued by the President Bill Clinton
Mm-hmm.
in 1997, saying that was a violation of the Civil Rights Act,
Yeah.
because that was racial discrimination
Mm-hmm.
by exposing them to a disproportionate potential negative impact
Mm-hmm.
of these potentially dangerous facilities.
Yeah.
And so they knew perfectly well that this was illegal to be doing
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did is the Energy Transfer Partners Corporation, Dakota Access Pipeline, they fabricated a report to give to the Environmental Protection Agency saying that we've examined this whole area and that there's no chance that there's any minority group that is going to be adversely impacted. And what they did is they studied the area a half a mile north of the Standing Rock Reservation, and then went northward and had a whole area where they said, see, there's no racial minorities here. And the fact of the matter is that the water flows from north to south.
Yeah.
And so it was from that very point where they started their place is where all the contamination would take place from this pipeline.
Yeah.
And so we pointed this out to the federal courts, and they are just ignoring it, because they're all that 83% of all the federal judges had been appointed by either leftover from Richard Nixon or from Ronald Reagan or George Bush the first or George Bush the second. And now here's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to be appointing 157 new federal judges. So that they're packing the federal courts with these extreme right-wing Federalist Society people that basically think that the Constitution is a ship that sits in the harbor in Boston. I mean, and that's what we're dealing with now. So that we have been having to try to figure out how to work our way through the legal system. That's partly our job at the Lakota People's Law Office, is to figure out how to work our way through the legal system to get the issues actually put in front of juries.
Yeah. And
of the 843 people that have been arrested, that 700 of these people have already been acquitted. They've either been acquitted or the charges have been dismissed against them, or they've been given deferred sentences because the prosecutor knows he can't convict them.
Yeah.
So there's now about 140 or so cases that are left. And we're actually doing one of the premier cases in which the challenge is being put forward, challenging the racial motive in changing the course of the pipeline, the racial motives in profiling, racially profiling the Native American people as terrorists. Also showing that the land actually on which the people were arrested, most of at the last child camp, never even belonged to the United States.
It was
so they couldn't lawfully sell it to anybody. And they don't care. They don't care what the law really says, because they believe that they have all the power. So we're trying to figure out how to craft legal defenses that can be put in front of a jury in North Dakota and convince them that this is a fundamental injustice.
Yeah. And it's, again, the same repetition of the broken treaties. I know in 1868, the Black Hills were given to the Lakota Nation. And then when gold was discovered, General Custer moved forward with the miners, and the whole treaty was completely being ignored. So it feels like it's the same situation over and over again.
Well, you need to be a little careful, because the 1868 treaty didn't give the Black Hills to the Native people. The Native people had those for 1,000 years. What happened is the United States government pledged that they had total sovereignty over those areas.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you're exactly right. That's how white people see it. White people say, "Oh, there's a treaty that gave them this land," and then they violated it by then taking it away from them afterwards.
Yeah.
But the reality is the United States came in and as of 1848, before the gold was discovered in California. Even the United States government recognized that the entire Great Sioux Nation was made up of some 90 million acres. And they knew perfectly well what the boundaries were because they were on U.S. official maps. But what they did is tried to take land away from them one step at a time. What we're going to point out in the defense of Chase Iron Eyes and Holyoke is that was not legal, even under their own terms, even under their own laws. That wasn't, because you can't just pass a statute and set aside a treaty that has been established, recognizing the sovereignty of all of that territory. And so that we're going to set that forth, and we believe that fair-minded white people can see that there's Chase. That's Chase Iron Eyes there. And Chase Iron Eyes is a lawyer. There's Sarah Nelson, our executive director, and Chase Iron Eyes is an attorney. And so he's going to be able to put on expert witnesses and examine them in front of the jury to show that the reason he had a good faith belief that this land did not belong to the U.S. Corps of Engineers at all, he's going to be able to show that to the jury. And what we're hoping is that the white jury is going to go, oh, wow, look at this. He's an intelligent guy. He understands the law. What do you know? He's not lazy, shiftless, alcoholic, drunken, that kind of lying characterization that they give of the Native people.
Go a little bit more into that and let our audience know about the charges that Chase Iron Eyes and Holyoke Laverty are facing and what is really going on and why these charges are being brought up the way they have been brought up, please.
Okay, well, both of them are charged with trespassing on this land where the last child camp was set up on February 1st of 2017, which allows us to challenge the bona fides of the title that is being asserted as having belonged to the United States and then been sold to people who sold the land allegedly to the Dakota Access Pipeline. And we can show that the United States never had good title to that land, and therefore they were never able to legally sell it to anybody. So that the Native people had title to the land and had a complete right to be on the land, engaging in the religious ceremony that they were engaged in. But Chase stands alone among all 843 people that have been charged. He stands alone, charged with inciting the people to riot because of his inviting people from around the country, primarily Native American people from around the country and around the world, to come to the site and to sit peacefully and engage in religious ceremony, calling upon their ancestors to intervene to stop this dangerous pipeline, which in fact has been prophesized by the ancient Lakota traditions, where they said that there would come a point in time when a large black snake would come creeping through their holy land, and it was up to them to stop it because it would destroy all of the water for the people. That the great black snake would poison the water. So he's charged with basically inciting insurrection against the state of North Dakota by calling people in and asking them to defy all of these heavily militarized police and National Guard and private military corporations, the Tiger Swan private military people.
That is absolutely. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for bringing the truth to us here today. I want to go into one other thing, and I feel like we already said, but I want to go a little bit deeper. You call the events at Standing Rock an unlawful criminal conspiracy. Let's go a little bit deeper into that and what's really, some of the things that are really happening behind the scenes over there.
Yeah. Well, for example, that the decision being made to move the pipeline from 10 miles north of the 92% white community of Bismarck to move it right down through the Great Sioux Nation, which is 82% Native American, less than a quarter of a mile from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation and directly under the sole source of drinking water for the people. That was clearly motivated on the part of the Dakota Access Pipeline management because they knew that the 91% white community of the entire state of North Dakota, it's the whitest state in the entire country. Actually, the 91% of the white people in North Dakota a significant plurality of these people harbor a racial prejudice against Native people.
Yeah.
And therefore, they harbor what they call a class-based, invidious, racially discriminatory animus against Native people as such. Okay? And that because of that, if they undertake activity that is intended to deprive Native American people of their equal protection of the laws because of that particular racial motive, that is a criminal conspiracy.
Yeah.
If you can show that two or more people joined together to participate in carrying into effect a program that racially discriminates against these people because of their race, that's a criminal conspiracy.
Yeah.
It violates Title 18, Section 241 and 242. But fortunately, there's a civil corollary in Title 42 of the United States Code, Section 1985, which says that private lawyers can bring a legal action against them for doing that. Now, what we have done is we have brought those charges as an affirmative defense in the case of Chase Iron Eyes and Holyoke. What we have said is that the carrying into full effectuation of the building of the pipeline under their sole source of drinking water, after they've been told that the pipeline presented too great a danger to the drinking water of the 92% community of Bismarck, 92% white community, that what we're saying is that in order to stop the full effectuation of the objectives of that criminal conspiracy, they had to take steps to stop the construction of the pipeline.
Yeah.
Because it was the final construction of the pipeline and pumping that water under their water, which is the full objective of the conspiracy. And so that's one of the criminal conspiracies. The second criminal conspiracy we pointed out is that when Tiger Swan came on the scene and started racially profiling the Lakota people as anti-Christian, racially or religiously motivated, indigenous jihadist terrorists. That racial profiling of Native people and impugning to them as a race those types of odious types of characteristics is in fact a criminal conspiracy. If in fact you attempt to take steps that, because of that characterization, you're going to deprive these people of the equal protection of the law. And the reason that the Energy Transfer Partners and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers moved the pipeline from north of Bismarck is because the white people objected. We've actually found the files now. We found the emails inside going back and forth from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers saying, well, look at the reason that the Energy Transfer Partner people moved the pipeline was because of the public response from the people in Bismarck saying that it was a threat to their water. And so that they recognized that threat vis-a-vis the white people, but they didn't recognize the same threat vis-a-vis the Native people. That's a classic racial discrimination between the two people. So that racial profiling on the part of the Tiger Swan personnel, characterizing Lakota people as jihadist terrorists, when you carry it into effect of building the pipeline, using that to justify building the pipeline through there and militarizing the opposition to the protest, that is also a criminal conspiracy in violation of the same criminal statutes. And so that we have put forth the fact that it was necessary for Chase to take the steps that he did in order to stop the final construction of the pipeline, because the actual finalization of the pipeline and the turning it on and pumping those 910,000 gallons an hour under their fresh water source, that is the full effectuation of the objectives of the conspiracy. So this is what we call a necessity defense. And that what it's saying is that the classic example is that if you see a 2-year-old child walking out onto the highway, the public highway, and you see an 18-wheel tractor trailer coming down the line, getting ready to run over the child, and you race out into the highway and you snatch the child up to safety and run across the road with them, and then you're charged with jaywalking. You can raise the defense against the jaywalking charge by saying, I had to do that minor violation in order to stop a much greater harm from taking place.
Yeah.
And so what we're arguing is that even though they weren't trespassing, because the title to the land never went to the United States government to sell.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, even if one or two of the people on the white jury were to think that it did constitute trespassing, you then have to find out whether or not that minor potential trespassing on an open field in the high prairies of North Dakota, in the middle of the winter, actually is how you compare that to the danger of a potential leak in the pipeline. Yeah. And the thing is that you need to compare what will happen if the pipeline breaks, because that's the danger that they're being exposed to. Okay, so what's the danger of them having a religious ceremony in an open field on the high prairies? What's the worst that could do? Nothing. Yeah. And then you compare it to what the worst that could happen with the pipeline is it destroys the entire water supply for the entire Native nation. So it's quite clear that under the white people's law itself, that the necessity defense requires them to be found not guilty.
Thank you, Dan. I want to
let me grab a little bit of water. Don't go away.
Okay.
I've got it right here.
Okay, sounds good. So, one of the things that I was, for me, Standing Rock symbolized was these injustices, no matter if it's wastewater in areas where racial minorities live, or the fossil fuel industry putting that pipeline through, again, a racial minority territory, thus threatening the water or contaminating the water, has been a recurring theme. And for me, Standing Rock was the first time where it actually went so much into the media, where it felt like it created a mass movement over there. But it was also finally being brought forth because there was so much independent media, social media, that allowed these events to be shared. Do you feel that what happened at Standing Rock and what is still going up in the after effects of Standing Rock, all the way to the lawsuits the water protectors are going through right now, do you believe there's going to be a ripple effect where other parts of the world or other parts of the United States will experiencing something similar?
Oh, yes. There's no doubt about that. The fact of the matter is the water protectors, the people who came to the site, there were as many as 10,000 people there at that given time. And there were people that came and left, so that there were probably 40, 50,000 people at one time or another were there at the site protesting what was going on. And that virtually all of them brought their cell phones with them. So they were taking footage. We're in fact in the process of gathering together all of that footage. We're going to be putting it all into a set of computers that we have that people give contributions to us, so that we can do this kind of major trial of really showing the jury what really happened. And we can show them by the video footage. We can show them the pictures of the state police and the local sheriff's departments dancing with the demonstrators, actually peacefully dancing and having a fairly normal kind of demonstration until Tiger Swan came. And then when Tiger Swan came, you saw all these huge military equipment and the guns be brought onto the scene, concussion grenades going, and the water hoses hosing everybody down. So we want to show the people the footage that the people took, showing how peaceful this whole thing was and how amicable the whole thing was, until the Tiger Swan people showed up and started mounting this kind of military assault against the people. So this footage, we want to be able to gather all this footage into one place. There are actually, if you go on the internet, YouTube, for example, and say, Standing Rock protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline, you'll get like 250 videotapes, where people put all their stuff up. So what we're doing is we're gathering all together. And then we're going to be indexing it and coding it so we can pull down the visuals to show the jury the information that's pertinent in cross-examining different witnesses that the bad guys put on that can buttress the testimony and the veracity of the testimony that our witnesses are putting on. It's not just their word for it. Here, look, videotape, and so that we're going to hopefully make a unique use of the videotape footage And we're also going to hope to get the whole trial televised.
That is amazing. We only have a few more minutes left, Danny, so I want to ask a couple of things. First of all, I would love, is there a call to action that you have for our audience? How can the Rebel Hearts audience support you and what is going on right now?
Well, the main thing that we have been given permission, the first one basically given extensive permission like this by the judge to engage in major depositions against the Tiger Swan Military Corporation.
Okay.
That means we're going to be able to go down into North Carolina where they are and depose Jim Reese, the head of anti-terrorism worldwide for Blackwater. You know, we're going to be able to interview the personnel under oath, just like Mueller is doing. We've been basically given the power of a special prosecutor to investigate these charges that we've made because we've deigned to go forward to make these charges under oath in the court to the judge. We're saying, look, we can show you if you will give us the discovery to show. We'll show you that what we're saying is true. And then so the judge can look at all of that prior to the trial, which is scheduled for August 13th.
Okay.
So what we need to do is have people from around the world, around the country, send contributions to the Lakota People's Law Project, specifically designated for the depositions. You know, it's not going to be paying for anything else. Those that are earmarked that way, but because it's going to cost us almost $5,000 for each one of these depositions. We have to fly or drive all the way down to North Carolina. We've got to get videotape footage set up. We've got to get page by page depositions. We have to hire stenographers from North Carolina. We have to go down to Texas, where the Energy Transfer partners in the Dakota Access Pipeline have their main offices. We have to do the depositions of all the different police who became totally disgusted with what it was that the Tiger Swan people were doing. We want to get police officers from Iowa and Nebraska and other places that came and became so disgusted at what was happening that they packed up and left. And we want to get them on videotape under oath saying what it is that had happened. And so we need people to pay for that. That we're doing this, our lawyers are doing this pro bono. You know?
I know.
But what we want to do is we need to pay the stenographers and the video footage and all of that kind of stuff. So if people would send a contribution to the Lakota People's Law Project, they can go onto the lakotalaw.org on their internet, and there's a little spot where they can just donate, and they can donate. Say, here, I want it to go to pay for depositions. You know, and so that we have a little apartment that we rented there. We've got offices down in Rapid City because of all of our work for the children. But we've had to set up a little office up there in Bismarck, North Dakota. We've got a little 3-bedroom apartment, and it's filled with all the camera equipment and stuff that we're working on using the videos. And we're sleeping on the floor, and we've got mattresses on the floor. But, you know, so those aren't real high expenses. We got a little used car we bought for $2,500 from this little 90-year-old lady who was a big supporter for us. You know, but we do need to pay the other people. And we also want to bring in professional investigators who can do hardcore on-the-ground investigation to find additional witnesses for us, et cetera. You know, mainly among the police and other people, you know, that we might not know about. We know about our people, but we need to get people who will talk to them. So this is going to cost money. But if the people all stand together and send in, you know, their $10, $20 contributions, you know, or $100 contribution if you want, we can help pay. We can help pay for our depositions, and the more we can raise, the more depositions we can do. And so we've got 54 depositions presently listed that we've already notified them that we're going to be taking. Okay, and so that you get that 54 depositions at $5,000 a deposition, you can see that that's like $250,000. You know, that is just not the kind of money that we have as a public interest organization. So if people want to have the depositions taken of Tiger Swan and want to have the depositions taken of the Dakota Access Pipeline people, finally, we've broken through and done enough of the legal work to be able to succeed in getting the authority to do it. And other people have been denied that permission because we happen to have spent a lot of time doing the legal research and the cases, et cetera, to compel them to give us this discovery. And so we've broken through on that issue. But we need the people's help from around the country and around the world if we're going to be able to pay the people to do the depositions that we need to do.
Yeah. So Rebel Hearts, go to lakotalaw.org and please support this so important cause, because again, it feels like it's going to create a ripple effect around the country, what you're doing right now. So we're getting close to the end of the interview over here. And Daniel, I want to thank you so much for the incredible work you're doing and your passion and your drive for illuminating the truth with what's going on. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today, and tell us one more time where people can find you.
Well, you can go to the romeroinstitute.org, or you can go to danielpsheehan.com, and it has a whole history of all the cases that we're doing. But they can reach all of us through lakotalaw.org.
Okay.
And the Romero Institute, the romeroinstitute.org, that is the 501c3 public interest organization that we've had since 1980, basically. So that's like 38 years. We've been working on these things, and this is one of the principal projects that we've done over and above the Karen Silkwood case and the Iran-Contra case and others. This is the major case that we're doing right now.
Thank you, Daniel. Again, thank you. It was such an honor to have you on today's show and speaking with you and having you share what you shared with us today. And I wish you and Chase and everyone involved with the Lakota People's Law Project so much light and so much, support as you're moving forward.
Prayers are okay.
And prayers are okay too.
Yeah, prayers are okay.
We'll send prayers too.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you, Kristie.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And Rebel Hearts, this was it for today. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. And we will have Lynn McTaggart on the show talking about quantum physics and her newest book, The Power of Eight. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. And remember, in the meantime, to rebel on.
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.